going to spend the next section just talking about mental health conditions. So, of course, I could probably spend the next hour just talking about listing all the different types of mental health conditions that are out there. But I'm just going to pick kind of 4 for today. But we have other types of workshops that go further into these types of mental health conditions. So depression, lots of different types of depression that are out there, and they go from mild, moderate, and severe. So you also have anxiety, again, various types of anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, eating disorders, personality disorders, and also mental distress. So I mentioned that kind of stress and self-harm and suicide are not mental health conditions, but they can accompany or maybe even lead to mental health conditions themselves. So these are some of the statistics that we have for mental health. So 1 in 4 people will experience poor mental health. So that might be kind of individually. So you might personally be impacted by kind of a mental health condition, or it might be a family member, it could be a colleague, or kind of a neighbour that you know of. And 1 in 5 people will experience depression, and 1 in 10 will experience anxiety, and 1 in 100 people will experience a psychotic disorder. So do these statistics surprise anyone? So would you expect them to be higher or maybe lower?
Sorry, Lucy, I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Do these statistics kind of surprise anyone? So would you expect these statistics to be maybe higher or maybe lower than what they are? So kind of 1 in 100 people experience psychotic disorder and 1 in 10 anxiety.
I'm quite surprised by the 1 in 100 people will experience a psychotic disorder. I think that's quite high, higher than I realised. 1 in 100, you know, that's, you think of 100 people being around you and somebody's, you know, mentally unwell to a psychotic degree is quite surprising, you know. Well, it's surprising to me. I didn't think it was as frequent as that, really. I think everyone's experienced depression at some time over something, you know, whether clinical depression or a reactive depression. But everybody, I think, every adult at some point, and not just adults, you know, teens, young people as well, experience depression, some people anxiety, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, Margaret. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And yeah, I think even kind of I was surprised in terms of the 1 in 100 experience psychotic disorder. So I think it's, but quite possibly these statistics might even be higher, but due to kind of people not seeking treatment or kind of due to stigma.
Of course, yeah, it may be, sure.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, but you make some really good points there, Margaret, thank you.
Okay.
But yeah, and I think 1 in 4 people experience poor mental health. It's probably a statistic that people might have heard of before, maybe kind of on mental health websites. But yeah, so I think it's really important that we do tackle kind of the stigma and discrimination, and again have these conversations and be able to kind of talk about it, so we can hopefully reduce those statistics. So I'm going to talk about kind of the next section just about depression, anxiety, bipolar, and schizophrenia. So as I say, 1 in 5 people will experience depression, but there is a misconception that it's kind of it's just feeling down in the dumps, or maybe, you know, people might say, oh, it's all in your head. But it's actually something that persists for quite a long time. So usually a lot of the symptoms will need to be around for around 2 weeks at least to be able to get a diagnosis. But it is much more than that, because sometimes depression can be kind of so severe that it can impact kind of every aspect of a person's life. So whether that's their relationships, work, kind of neighbours, or kind of various other aspects of their life in that way. And sometimes it can be so serious that people can't actually carry on with a normal life. So again, making it so important that we kind of inform people and get people to reach out for the support that's out there. So some of the symptoms, and as I say, mental health conditions are very individual. So some people might have some of these or all of these kinds of symptoms that we have. So it's feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, kind of despair. They might also feel numb, so just not feel anything at all. And they might have poor concentration and motivation. They might have a loss in interest in activities that they normally enjoy. They might also be quite tearful, maybe have sleep problems. So some people might sleep more kind of in the afternoon and less in the night. So it's kind of a mix and change in sleeping patterns as well. There's also feelings of guilt and maybe even suicidal thoughts as well. So again, it just makes it crucial that we do get the word out there so that people can reach out and get the right kind of support, intervention and coping mechanisms to help them through that as well. So there is a little video which I'm not even going to risk playing today because I don't trust my technology, but I'll pass it on afterwards. And it's the black dog. So it might be something that you might have heard of as depression being referred to. It's just a nice kind of 4-minute animation that kind of describes what it's like to have depression. And there's also another one that goes kind of living with the black dog, and it kind of describes what it's like to live with an individual with depression. So I will pass those on kind of after the session so you can watch those as well. So with anxiety, so I mentioned 1 in 10 people will be affected by anxiety or phobias at some point in their lives. So again, quite a high number, because I think we've got probably maybe just less than 10. So chances are kind of one of us within this group is likely, so on average, to have anxiety. But most people will never kind of ask for treatment. So it's something that there might be kind of the fear of stigma or worried kind of the consequences of reaching out for help, kind of what would happen. But there are 3 broad types of anxiety. So we have general anxiety disorder, so GAD, and this is when someone has an anxiety that's not specific for a certain thing. So they might actually have feelings of dread or kind of unable to relax for a very long time, but it might not be a specific thing. It could be multiple different things that happen in life that cause them to have feeling of anxiety. But we also have phobias, so this is probably something you've heard of, kind of agoraphobia, so lots of different types of phobias that are out there as well. And it's just kind of, it's something that people might avoid doing. So if people have a fear of heights, they might just avoid doing certain activities, or they might have social phobia, so they might stop attending different groups or birthdays, occasions, where they just don't want to kind of be surrounded by bustling, whether it's worried about kind of shame or embarrassment of doing something that they might be worried about. And there's also panic attacks. So panic attacks are kind of a severe onset of anxiety. So some people might even refer to a panic attack as having kind of a heart attack as well, because the feelings are so physical. So quite often anxiety, as well as having emotional and kind of cognitive symptoms, it's also quite a physical mental health condition. So kind of feelings of tension, especially kind of panic attacks, having kind of shortness of breath, kind of heart pounding, and kind of feeling like maybe the world is kind of collapsing on you a little bit as well. So some of the symptoms that we have with anxiety are kind of rumination, so maybe all kind of thinking about different things over and over again in ways of maybe trying to improve them, but also catastrophizing. So you might be kind of worrying about what's going to happen in the future and maybe thinking the worst possible thing that's going to happen as well. But also muscle tension or maybe clenching of jaws, so having that kind of tension with you all day, kind of every day, is going to impact a lot of those physical sensations as well. But I mentioned kind of shortness of breath, might even have digestive problems, kind of have more of a pessimistic outlook on life as well. Sleep problems, if you imagine kind of worrying, ruminating, you might stay up all night kind of doing those types of things as well, and headaches and kind of increased blood pressure as well. So it's a lot of different things, more than that little box contains, but lots of symptoms that are there with anxiety. So bipolar, it's sometimes referred as to kind of manic depression. And quite often diagnosis of bipolar is quite difficult because it's quite a complex condition. So it's usually when someone experiences mood swings from periods of kind of overactive, excited, kind of euphoric type of behavior where they feel quite invincible, they can take on everything, to periods of kind of deep depression. So I talked about the symptoms of depression, so kind of that low mood, but also with having stable periods in between. So quite similar with anxiety and depression. There are different types of bipolar, so it's not kind of one thing, but someone might have longer periods of depression, but kind of small periods of mania, or it could be the other way around. And it could actually be something that cycles. So some people might have kind of maybe 4 different cycles per year, or maybe just have one. They'll just have long period of depression for like 2 years and then mania for a month and so on. So mania, some of the symptoms are kind of very excited, might also be irritable and agitated, so kind of wanting to get out and do stuff, but taking on a load of different things as well. So during this period, they might take on a lot more than what they can actually do and what's within the time frame, but they feel like, oh yeah, I can take on all of these things as well. They might also feel quite confident, quite adventurous in that way as well. And then depression, so this is kind of the other type of mood kind of period that they might have. It's feelings of kind of that low mood, so tearful. They might actually lack in confidence, so very different to mania. And they might feel tired, might have low self-esteem. But then some people with bipolar might also experience hallucinations and delusions as well. So this is kind of in the more severe end of bipolar. So finally, I'm just going to talk about schizophrenia. So as I said, it's a bit of a shorter session. It gives you kind of an overview of these mental health conditions. So 1 in 100 people will experience schizophrenia in their lifetime. And there is a misconception that it's a split personality, but that comes from kind of the origins of the name, kind of meaning splitting of the mental functions. So this is someone who's kind of unable to distinguish their own thoughts and ideas from kind of the reality of the world around them. And it's described as a type of psychosis. So, and the symptoms of schizophrenia are split into positive and negative symptoms, so that's not good or bad. Positive ones are kind of changes in the behavior, and negatives are kind of the withdrawal or the lacking of certain behaviors. So some of the positive symptoms of schizophrenia, you've got delusions. So an individual might think kind of the family is against them, or there's something going on that's kind of happening in the world, and they feel kind of targeted. But as I say, it's so individual. There are so many different types that people might have. But it's kind of believing that something is happening, but in their mind it's real. It's something that is so true to them, but to someone else, and the reality kind of that's outside the mind, it's not kind of actually happening. And hallucinations, so this is when someone might see, hear, smell, taste, feel things that aren't actually existing outside of their own mind. But again, these can really vary between person to person as well. But also might have confused thoughts, kind of changes in the behavior and the thoughts, might also be quite anxious, upset, maybe even suspicious of the people around them as well. And the negative symptoms, so people might start to be kind of more socially withdrawn. They might not kind of stop having conversations with people, or might not engage in conversations. They might lose interest in the motivation and kind of the activities, the relationships, sex, kind of lots of different things that are going on. And they might also have sleep problems and maybe a lack of concentration. So if you try to imagine that kind of our memories are stored in maybe like a little cabinet, and it's all neatly put away. So every time we try to think of a memory, we can quite easily pick out that memory and it makes sense. But imagine that someone knocks over that cabinet. So a person with schizophrenia, they would find it really difficult to kind of retrieve those memories. So a lot of these ideas and thoughts, they are all there, but they're kind of all jumbled up and disconnected. So in their mind, there is something that's happened, it is based on real memories, but trying to be able to explain that to someone else is quite jumbled, it's quite difficult to retrieve those memories as well.